welcome or welcome back. I'm Jess. This is take 2 of my June wrap-up video. The first take was an hour-and-a-half dumpster fire, so this one will be better. And it's not like I read that many books. I finished 16 books in June, and then there's also one I did not finish, so only one DNF. That's nice. Starting with the DNF, we have Sweet Temptation by Maya Banks. This book I stopped reading because our main characters had known each other prior to the start of the story and have not seen each other in several years, as far as the male lead knows. Female lead has seen him at least once a year in the time that they've been separated. Anyway, that's not exactly important, but in their reconnection scene when they are talking, and I think in the span of one conversation, possibly only on one page, he uses 5 different pet names to refer to her. I have several pet names for my spouse. I don't use them all in one conversation. That's strange. That's weird. No one speaks that way. I've never heard someone speak that way. I don't speak that way. It really rubbed me the wrong way. So that kind of took me out of it. Like, nothing had been really good about the book up until that reconnection scene. So when that happened, okay, nail in the coffin. Next romance on the list is The Girl Who Knew Too Much by Amanda Quick. Amanda Quick is Jane Ann Krentz's historical romance pen name. This book is set in 1930s-ish California, not terribly far from LA. Our female lead had been a personal secretary on the East Coast before her employer was murdered. So she changed her name and she moved to California and started working as a reporter for a gossip rag focused on Hollywood actors and actresses. And she goes to this little town called Burning Cove to follow a story on a very popular up-and-coming actor. Our male lead in this case is the owner of an exclusive and elite hotel in this town, Burning Cove, and he was formerly a stage magician until he was shot and possibly, someone attempted to murder him. Because that's how these stories go. The, crazy backstory and then people with pasts coming together and falling in love. And they do, of course. It's a romance novel. They fall in love. I enjoyed this one. I liked the antagonists as well. Like, I thought they were kind of creepy and a little bit scary. So I thought this one was really interesting. Yeah. For another Jane Ann Krentz, we've got her pen name Jayne Castle for Sweetwater the Witch. So back in January, I had read a book called After Dark, which was the first of the Jayne Castle books set on a planet called Harmony. And that is also where Sweetwater the Witch occurs, is on that planet Harmony, only this is like book number 15 or 16. And this one, loved the characters. All around, I enjoyed this book. So, our female lead is a former criminal profiler who was in a sticky situation and decided, you know what, screw this job, I'm gonna go into matchmaking. She becomes a matchmaker. Mr. Sweetwater is her client, whom she has set up on several, like double digits, several bad dates. As a result of his many failed dates, they decide to go on a fake date so she can assess his dating style in the midst of, danger and people coming after them. This was very entertaining. I really like fake dating, but I also really enjoyed the kind of matchmaking angle. I thought it was really cute. Next romance was Martha Waters' To Marry and to Meddle. So In my first attempt at this June wrap-up video, this was one of the first points where I just completely devolved. I could not remember the plot of this book to save my life. Like in my first video, I ended up just reading the back of the book to the camera. Yeah. The story here is a marriage of convenience. Our female lead has been in society for a while. Her parents are not doing so well financially, and she is starting to despair of ever being free of her family and having her own like children and relationships. She just wants to move on with her life. She does not want to be stuck as a spinster relying on her really terrible parents. They are bad. They are not good parents at all. This is definitely I recommend no contact situation. Our male lead is the disgraced younger son of a duke, I think. And he's disgraced because he decided to purchase a theater, and he is actively involved in the management of this theater. But when he purchased it, his thought was he wanted to market it to other titled gentlemen and their mistresses, not their wives. So now it's been several years. He wants to clean up the image of his theater and attract the wives as well. Despite our female lead's status of unmarried after several years of London seasons, her reputation is sterling. So our male lead wants to marry our female lead because he thinks that will get him the respectability for his theater. Female lead just wants to marry the male lead to get away from her family. Of course, they fall in love. That's how this goes. It's a romance. It's very cute despite the plot apparently being very forgettable. But I do remember liking the dialogue, so. And I believe this is the last romance, that is Jessica Clare's What the Hex. So, by the title, you might imagine, oh, is this witchy? Yes, it is. I do enjoy the world building for this. I did not particularly care for our main characters. I felt like there wasn't a whole lot of dimension to them. They fit the grumpy sunshine romantic trope, which that's fine. I don't necessarily dislike that trope, you know, opposites attracting, but our really grumpy character here was super arrogant and annoying, and our sunshine character was just all sunshine all the time, despite actually having very neglectful parents and having a role that left her very unsatisfied overall. She wanted a different job. And I don't know, I did not like the characters per se, but the world building was really neat. I would read other Jessica Clare, and I wouldn't necessarily dissuade anyone from reading this. I want to be able to connect a little bit more with my characters. I also continued reading in the Spy Family series, so books 4, 5, and 6. Continues to be adorable. Of course, just so charming and sweet. And our family in previous volumes had been really starting to bond together, and at this point they're not only bonded, but those bonds are deepening and they're starting to become protective of their family unit. And it's just so sweet to see them really become this family. And in volume 4, there is a dog on the cover. They get a dog. And of course, because this is Spy Family, this dog has precognition. Yes, this dog can see the future. And because Anya is psychic, she can read the dog's mind, and wow, it's just so fun. It really is just so fun. I also really enjoyed the character here. I believe she was introduced actually in this volume, volume 6. I really enjoyed the sort of stoic stone face that she had in all of her scenes, alongside her internal thoughts. that were anything but stoic and stone-faced. That was a delightful contrast. So, continues to be the perfect story. This month I also finished a couple nonfiction. So first up we have Jim Holt's When Einstein Walked with Godel. So based on the title and the cover, I had assumed this would maybe be a little bit more biographical of the two men, Albert Einstein and Kurt Godel, and maybe of their friendship with each other. This was not that. This was a series of essays that were just kind of about different math and science history, and not even necessarily related to Albert Einstein or Kurt Godel's contributions to those fields. So I didn't really understand the title, didn't really understand the cover choice. Despite that disconnect for me, this was good. The essays were dry, so I don't necessarily think it is a must-read nonfiction, but if you are interested in history, math, and science essays, you might enjoy this. The other nonfiction I finished this month was Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson. This book was recommended to me by a friend, and I'm very glad she recommended it. This was a very good read. One of the things I appreciated about this is I feel like a lot of other books that deal with adults processing and coping with trauma from their childhoods, and specifically related to their parents who continue to be quite toxic. I really appreciated that this book said at some point it's okay to just not have any contact. Whereas I feel like a lot of other books I've read sort of on this topic are more in line with, oh, well, as you deal with your trauma and your grief and your pain, well, then you'll be able to, build bridges with that other person. And the sign of you actually dealing with your trauma is that you're able to have a relationship with that incredibly toxic person who has no interest in changing and continues to be really terrible to you. Well, you can do that once you're better, once you're healed. And I just don't think that that is realistic for all cases. And I'm gonna actually say I just don't think that's realistic flat out, because if someone else isn't also willing to be part of a healthy relationship, why? Why would you force yourself to be part of that dynamic? It doesn't make any sense. You should love yourself. Don't hate yourself. This book, though, is a proponent of the idea that maybe no relationship is how you fix the relationship, how you start to heal or how you continue healing from past trauma. Another thing I appreciate about this book is in how it laid out the information. Not only was I able to see the ways in which my parents were emotionally immature and, well, frankly, just failed at being parents, I could also see the ways in which I wasn't yet emotionally mature. If I became a parent, I might also fail my children. If not exactly the same ways that my parents did, then in other ways, because I also have some emotional growth and emotional maturity to make for myself. I do recommend this book. I think this is a very good book for humans in general, especially if you have an interest in learning more about yourself and your relationships and improving yourself and your relationships. The rest of the books on my list all come from the Summer Reading Challenge hosted by my local library. The reading challenge started on June 1st and runs until August 24th. It's focused more on engaging younger readers. The list of recommended titles is more young adult with a sprinkling of middle grade. But I like those, so why not? Why not just be part of the challenge and read all of the books? I don't know if I'll get to all of the books, but I did make some headway this month. So first book is We Dream of Space by Erin Entrada Kelly. This middle grade takes place in the month leading up to and like a couple of days after the failed Challenger launch. And it's told through the perspective of 3 siblings who are all quite different from each other. This was a good look at how siblings may be very different from each other, or even just friends may be very different from each other, but you can still come together, you can still love each other and support each other when you care for each other that way. But since they're all in middle school, there's a lot that's changing. They're at the, at the beginning of puberty. They're developing crushes. They're not sure if they have crushes. They like their interests, but suddenly, maybe there's a little more of a gender conformity starting to happen in their peer groups. This was really sweet, and I very much enjoyed reading this. I highly recommend this to anyone who enjoys middle grade or has a younger reader in their life. This is a very, very good book. Next up is a young adult rom-com, Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. This was really fun. So our main characters here are classmates at a private school, and both of them have families in the restaurant business. So our male lead has a family with just a single storefront shop. They're not doing so well. He's in charge of their social media account. On the other hand, our female lead, she is a transplant. Their family restaurant became big and they are going international. She is also in charge of her mom's company's social media accounts, but only because the social media account manager doesn't really seem to know what she's doing. It is not a good fit. Our 2 characters, they're getting to know each other through, a witty little forced banter, staged banter between the 2 social media accounts, which is drawing some attention. It kind of reminds me of how I'll see, I'm not big on Twitter, but like I've seen some tweets here or there from, like Burger King or Wendy's or something, and they're just so snarky. That's what this is. They're just posting really snarky tweets and getting some engagement that way. Very fun, easy breezy, romantic comedy. Next young adult is a fantasy called Fable by Adrienne Young. I warn you now, this has a sequel. And it's important that you know, because the way the first book ends, you might want to pick up the sequel immediately. I'm busy, so it's gonna take me a minute. So this story, Fable, is our main character. She was born and raised living on a ship. Her father was the captain of the ship. Her mother was one of the crewmates. Well, there was a storm, her mom died, that ship went down. Her father saved her, but then abandoned her on an island. Said, hey, if you make it off this island, come find me. Well, this island is very much a dog-eat-dog sort of community. After 4 years, I believe, she almost has the funds she needs to get off this island, to purchase passage off. Well, of course, that's when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, and she is in desperate need of getting off the island before maybe she is not alive. So stakes are high. She gets off the island. At the end of the day, this became more of a found family, and I thought that was really charming. I liked this a lot. I really enjoyed the writing. Next up was not a good book. I did finish it, but it was not a good book. That is The Stars We Steal by Alexa Donne. I do not recommend this book. It was too long, for starters. Not usually a problem for me. I enjoy a chunky book, but it was long and not focused on actually developing characters or story. So why was it long? Just a lot of words kind of vomited onto a page. This desperately needed an edit. It made no sense. The premise is that it's set in the future. Our planet, Earth, basically people screwed it over, surprise, surprise. And scientists developed these satellites that could orbit the Earth. Of course, you know, the uber rich were able to afford that. They moved onto the satellites. Every 5 years, there is a meeting for the eligible young ladies and gentlemen of society to come together and, well, get it on, like get married, form alliances, historical romance-esque, in space, in the future. And let me give you a little description of the first couple chapters. Our female lead is a Scandinavian princess. She had a childhood love. She loved him dearly. When she was 16, he proposed to her. She accepted, but then she had to refuse him because she was persuaded to reject him by her selfish and unfeeling father, who plays favorites with his daughters, and her maternal aunt, who did not approve of the alliance either because our girl's boyfriend was not rich. He was not titled. So our boyfriend goes off, makes a fortune, and then he's back. He's back for the season of frivolity. He is participating in the let's get married because we're all of marriageable age and it's been 5 years. Guess his name. You want to guess his name? I'll tell you. His name is Elliot Wentworth. Persuasion is one of my favorite Jane Austen novels. This is very clearly a Persuasion retelling. Actually, you know what? Let's read the back of the book. Let's do that. The back of the book says, "The Bachelorette meets sci-fi in this gripping story about a young girl caught in a world of royal intrigue and lost love in her quest to save her family from ruin." How is that like The Bachelorette? Like, it's not. It's not. It's like historical romances set in London and going to these balls for the season. That's what this is. This is an historical romance trope set in space on satellites and is a retelling of Jane Austen's Persuasion. Only it's bad. It's just bad. This could have been better if the writer had focused on character development and actually setting up motivations that make sense. And also, our Wentworth character is not. He is not. So Captain Wentworth in Persuasion, he was a good man. He was a kind man. He believed very strongly in his ethics and his morals. Elliot Wentworth in this story is running a black market. Like, he's not even Robin Hood, where he steals from the rich to give to the poor, which is still not okay, but is at least somewhat sympathetic. No, he's stealing from the rich to sell to the poor. He is running a black market. This is Captain Wentworth revisited? Like, no. This was not good. This is not good. Try harder. Alexa Donne. Which, by the way, I have listened to some of her YouTube videos. I quite like her. I think she's lovely. Did not care for this book. Next young adult we have is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So I've actually heard this title several times. So it's possible that you have also already heard this title several times. The premise here is that a young woman, her mom has died, she is estranged from her father, and She just has a relationship with a half-sister that is her only support network. Well, one day she receives a summons to a family's estate because the head of the household died and he has left our main character everything in his will, and he is capital B billionaire. So she's now, and there are stipulations. I believe she has to live in the house with all the other family members for a full year before she can actually claim her inheritance, before it is irrevocably hers. So a good portion of this I felt was very predictable, but not necessarily in a bad way. I did enjoy reading it. I believe I read this shortly after I read The Stars We Steal, so this was a good palate cleanser for that book for sure. A little bit of a love triangle, which I'm not super keen on, but whatever. This is also start of a series. I don't know how many books there are in it. Yeah, I probably won't continue reading it, but I did like this book. I thought it was decent. For a book I loved, absolutely loved, we have Jennifer Longo's What I Carry. So our main character here is a 17-year-old who is about to age out of the foster care system in a year. She's entering her senior year of high school. She has had like a dozen foster homes while she's been in the system, and her experience has not been particularly negative. She hasn't really connected well with anyone. But she's always kept her head down. She does what she can to, stay in good standing so that she's never in trouble. Well, her social worker, with whom she does have a good, solid relationship, she begs her, just stay in one place for 1 full year. Just make this your last placement. Because the social worker is worried about how moving during her senior year of high school will affect her college applications. So our girl promises her social worker she will do her best to stay in one spot. And of course, it is this final placement where she finds the family that she deserves, where she finds connections and friendships and love and just a home. And I loved this. I love this a lot. This was such a good book. It was actually the first book I read of the summer reading challenge, so this had me stoked to continue the challenge. For best book of the month, oh, this one was hard. We have Andrew Fukuda's This Light Between Us. So this is historical young adult fiction set during World War II. Our main character is a Japanese American boy, teenager. His family is moved to an internment camp, and when he is 18, he does join the military to go to France because his hope is that he will find his pen pal. Since he was quite young, he's had a pen pal who is a French Jewish girl, and we're in World War II. At some point while he's in the internment camp, he is no longer able to receive letters from her, and he's worried about her. This is one of the main reasons he joins the military, because he wants to find her, he wants to make sure she's safe. We don't really ever have her perspective aside from some of the letters that she has sent to our main character, but she's charming and kind and funny. This was a heartbreaking story. It was beautiful, but heartbreaking. I do recommend this book. I think it's important to remember how kind we can be to each other, but also it's important to remember how unkind we can be to each other and try to do better. This book, I definitely cried at multiple points of this book. It was, and some of the crying was good crying. Like, I was just so touched. So entertained, so charmed that I couldn't help but cry a little because I loved the characters and the story so much, but there was also some sad crying as well. This is definitely best book I read in June 2023. I highly recommend it. If you are okay with some sadness in your books, definitely give this one a shot. All right, now in my first take of this video, that was an 1.5 hour long dumpster fire, I completely forgot to tell you about one of the books. So I'm going to do a quick double check. I think I have gotten all of them. Okay, I am positive I have actually talked about all of the books that I read in June this year. Well, thank you for joining me. This was fun, and I hope that you're having a good reading month. If you have any recommendations you'd like to share, please do so in the comments. I'll see you at the next one. Bye!